Hi there, welcome to my channel. My name is Clara Z and I do videos on luxury handbags and fashion items. So today I am going to talk a bit about my thoughts on the Chanel Reissue 2.55 bag, along with a bit of the wear and tear that I have experienced on this particular bag that I have owned for nearly 10 years. So some of you may or may not be familiar with this bag. This is the original Coco Chanel Mademoiselle flat bag. It was created in February of 1955, which is why it's called the 2.55 bag. And this was actually relaunched by Karl Lagerfeld in 2005 for the 50th anniversary of the creation of the original bag. So this bag is iconic not only because it was the original bag created by Coco Mademoiselle, but it was kind of like a 50th anniversary celebration, which makes this bag extremely special, although a lot of people will more be familiar with the CC logo that Karl Lagerfeld later replaced the bag with to be the iconic bag for the Chanel flat bag, although this was the original one. So some key differences are the leather. So this one is a distressed calfskin, as you can see here. Still has the iconic leather quilting to mimic the jockeys wear, or some people were saying it was the stained glass windows in the Abbey where Coco Mademoiselle grew up, so matches the cushions in her chairs. So there are many explanations for the quilting. Chain you'll see here is actually different from the leather interlacing woven straps, and these apparently were to mimic some of the waist belts through which people wore their keys. The difference is that the lock here is actually a rectangular or square lock, and this was to signify that Coco Mademoiselle remained single, which is why it's a lock. But otherwise the bag is largely the same. The leather is definitely a lot softer, but what I think this bag stands for is really special because it epitomizes freedom for women who at the time had to carry this bag by hand, or they had to kind of carry it as a clutch. So by having the chains on the bag, it allowed women to be hands-free, and even to this day I think a lot of us really appreciate and enjoy hands-free so that we can use our hands to do other things. Me, this bag not only signifies the original Coco Mademoiselle bag, but also the 50th anniversary and celebration of women's liberation from carrying this bag by hand and having the option to carry this as a shoulder strap. So these are some of my initial thoughts on why I bought this bag. Actually, when I bought this bag 10 years ago, I had not known what the Reissue bag was. At the time I bought this because I thought this bag was quite subtle, it seemed well made, and it didn't have CC logos screaming loudly all over the place. So I have a very interesting experience with this bag. I bought this bag, I used it for a while, and then I put it away. I put it in a shelf without the box actually, but it was kind of laying flat like this. There was nothing on top of it. There was some books underneath it, but I laid it flat and I kept it there for quite a few years, and one day I just decided I wanted to use this bag again. When I first took out this bag, I thought I had destroyed the bag, and the reason being the bag was a bit flat. So I was thinking to myself, did something fall on it, or did I flatten the bag to destroy the bag? Because this is actually very different, that it can lay flat. And later on I found out actually this is how the bag was designed, because Apparently there is a story, and I don't know if it's true or not, that Karl Lagerfeld actually found this in Coco Mademoiselle's place, and it was in a bag, and it was basically flattened because there were either things below or above or beneath it. So actually the bag design is flat like this. So if you like your bags to be pristine and boxy, which a lot of the original flaps are, then I would say you probably would not like this. But one of the reasons why this is flat is because when you wear this against your body, it lays very close to the body because it's more flat. People have asked me, oh my goodness, does it bother you that there is kind of this part that will flatten out? And originally it did, because I didn't know this was the design of the bag, but now that I know it is, I actually really like it. And it's because it shows it's got character. It has its own character. There is no other bag on the market with this shape. Okay, especially for Chanel, this is kind of like a signature, and you will not find any other luxury handbags that has this shape. So actually I don't mind it that much. This is a bit about how I rediscovered the bag. So I took it out and I put items inside. And after I put items inside, I noticed that the bottom would actually flatten out. So it's not like just because it's flat you can't kind of flatten it out. So you can flatten it out, and if you want to and you prefer that it has a more flattened out look, you could stuff the bag as such and set your bag down like this when you store it so that it doesn't flatten out. But to me, this is what makes the bag special. So I really don't mind it. So some people are a bit worried about buying this bag because they are worried that some of these bags, they look really worn out after quite a few years. My bag is about 10 years old. I don't have the exact date, but you can see it's from the 13 series, which according to a lot of date guides, this would have been purchased between 2009 and 2010. I'm making this video in 2019, so it's been about 10 years. So what can I say about this bag after 10 years? So because it is a grain distressed calfskin, I don't think the leather looks in any way any worse than when I originally got this bag, and even when I take it out, it looks still very pristine. But this bag is supposed to have a vintage look, so even if it got more creased or crinkled for any reason, this is the look of the bag. So if you really like your smooth calfskin, you like that very strict look, this bag is not for you, because this is supposed to have a very vintage vibe, and the more I use it, it actually looks more vintage, so it adds to the character of the bag. So I really like that about this bag, because it's not like some of the other bags where after you've used it a while it looks old and run down and you can tell it's an old bag. But this one, it looks almost the same as when I originally used it, and I feel this bag has more character because, so if you look at this bag, there is nothing wrong with it at all. Nothing in terms of the leather. What I have noticed, you can see here, there is some slight creasing along here, and that's because maybe I've set the bag down and this part has bent in a little bit there, but it's hardly noticeable. You would have to look really close. So the bag is also quite pointy, but this is the shape of the bag, and as I have used the bag, it's become more and more pointy. Maybe it's because I grab it like this, but this is the shape of the bag. It's like a triangle, so it doesn't really bother me. It makes the bag special. And you'll see there are more creases along here because obviously this bag can bend this way, so there's some creasing along here and also on the other side. And there is some creasing along the bottom, if you can see there. There's some lines here because the bag can go like this. So you can see some creasing along there. Another thing to note is that because this is a very soft calfskin, is much softer than the lambskin or the caviar skin. You can see it's just really malleable. There is a positive to that in that you can fit more things in this bag because it is more malleable and it is more stretchable. Having said that, you don't want to overstuff this bag because you can cause the bag to distort more easily. So some things I've noticed is that the flap sometimes, if you have overstuffed it, I mean this one is kind of okay. I can still lock it, but I mean if you have been not storing it properly, I could see that this flap could be distorted left or right. This one's still okay, so you do need to jiggle that a bit before it will go in, or if you don't, you know, if you've been like holding it like this, I don't do this ever, but you know, you can sometimes miss that hole, but so far it's, you know, it falls like that and it still goes in. So, but I could see this flap being crooked over time if you don't store it properly or if you kind of abuse it. If you look inside, this is also like a distressed calfskin. You can see where I've been opening the flap a lot. There are some creases along here, but that's to be expected for any of these flap bags that would open and close at a certain spot. So this is where that top is, that pointy top is. So you'll see that there is some creasing along here. The flap is just the flap, and again, because it is a very soft leather, this could kind of move up or down depending on how you store your items. Inside is also that burgundy color that is very iconic of Chanel classic bags, and so that looks perfect. And the inside is also made of leather, and I mean it looks absolutely fine. It looks absolutely fine. Some people have talked about this clasp here. It has the vintage feel, and sometimes what people have noticed that is sometimes this lock will rub against the top portion. But you can see here, you can hardly notice that it has scratch. I don't see any scratches. What has happened is that the lock is slightly, you see kind of like dark spots around it to make it more vintage looking. This part is actually more shiny because it's rubbed against here. So instead of having that kind of blackish tone on it, this part is actually more shiny because it's just rubbed against the lock from opening and closing it. So, but again, you really can't see that. The chains, they look perfect. They are made of the ruthenium color and they are supposed to look vintage. And I mean these chains, they're perfect. There's absolutely nothing wrong with these chains. They look as gorgeous as when they first came. So this is kind of what the bag looks like after 10 years, and I feel it looks fine. Something to note is that the bigger the bag, the more high the likelihood that you can have more distortion because you can put more and you can end up stuffing it more. So I bought this one, the size small, about 2 years ago. I do find the material slightly different. So if you look at the bottom material of this and the side material here, it's different from the top and bottom. So this leather seems to be a bit more malleable, but this part seems harder. So if I knock on this, you can hear it. There's a difference. Can you hear that? So this part is actually quite hard. You'll see this is less flat because maybe it's just newer, or I don't know if it's because the material is different. I can't really remember if this bottom was as hard, but to me this feels very soft, and can you hear that? It's much softer, whereas this one, so I don't know if they changed the material because this is obviously a lot harder, and this material is also along the sides, but if on the squishy padded part, sorry, maybe the back is a better, it is that soft and squishy distressed calfskin. So it's a slightly different material. This one I've had for 2 years. The only thing I can see that has wear on this is, again, that clasp, because the clasp kind of opens and closes at the front. This part is that you can see that it's slightly a bit more metallic shiny because of the rubbing. Some people have said that they've seen black, but I don't. To me, it's just kind of like a shiny metal part because it's been scratching against the lock. But again, you really don't notice that unless you look super close. So with my latest purchase, which is the Reissue Mini, this one is actually a single flap. Because it has the shiny hardware, I don't have that issue on the clasp because it's shiny. So even if it rubbed against it and became more shiny, that's fine, unless it's matte underneath. But so far I see no issues, and because this is a smaller size, it feels like it's more robust and it feels more hard. Again, the bottom of this is quite hard compared to this part. It's more padded, and along the sides and the bottom it is the same material. What I'm noticing now also is this part is not as hard as the one on my small. Yeah, that's a lot tougher. I don't know if that's because this is a double flap and so they use a tougher material, or it could be the batch, because some of you who are more experienced in buying Chanel may know that on the batch of leather that they get, sometimes some leathers are more distressed, less distressed, softer, harder, or some lamb feel like calf and some calf feel like lamb, and so it also depends on the batch that you get. So I hope this was helpful to you if you're still thinking about this bag. This is my favorite Chanel bag. Not only is it the iconic bag and the original bag, it is discreet. And I also feel that it has special meaning because it was like the first Coco Mademoiselle bag, and talks about the freedom and the liberation of women. To me, that means a lot. You know, who can not be happy about being more hands-free and freedom to use your hands for anything. A couple of pros and cons before I go. So the pros of the Chanel Reissue bag are that it is discreet. It tends to hold a bit more. So if you are familiar with the classic CC logo bags, the small, medium, and large, they will all fit a bit more than the classic bags, and I find that the capacity, at least myself, I enjoy more than the classic bags. It has a lot of history, this bag, and it has a lot of meaning, as I mentioned before. This bag is less prone to scratches, so if you're worried about lambskin scratching or even caviar can chip, I've never experienced it, but I have heard horror stories of caviar chipping. This one should age very nicely. It looks better with age. It is supposed to be vintage looking, and something which I don't feel a lot of people talk about is that the chains are really easy to switch around. So I know that a lot of people like the interwoven kind of leather straps, but look at this. It just is super smooth, and you cannot get this type of smoothness from the regular Chanel leather bags. That's just It's just so gratifying to use. I know it may be a bit strange, but I really enjoy that because it's just so easy to interchange. So some of the cons may be because it has a softer leather, maybe more prone to losing its shape, especially if you abuse it or if you overstuff it. So I never recommend overstuffing your bags. And I don't know why this bag on the resale market tends to not have as good a resale value as the classic CC. Maybe it's because people are more familiar with the CC logo, but to me, this is the original iconic 2.55 bag, and to me this symbolizes the first bag for the liberation of women from a handbag by being able to carry it on their shoulder, cross body, whatever, whatnot. So I hope you have found this video interesting and useful to you, and if you are still on the fence about whether you want to get this bag or not, I highly recommend getting this bag. And if you have any comments and questions, please feel free to leave them down below. And if you have not yet, please like and subscribe to my videos if you'd like to continue to watch my future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you a very pleasant day, and I hope that this video has sincerely helped you to make some wise choices on your handbag choices. Thanks, and have a nice day. Bye now.